One of the things I've always said about a Dorchester County citizen, and it goes all the way back in my upbringing, is we don't have a lot, but we always took care of what we had. And what I mean by that is I truly felt Dorchester County was a true middle class to maybe a step below middle class effort. We're hardworking people. The majority of the time it was, a two-parent household. But if it was a one-parent household, that parent worked harder than anyone to see that their child got a proper education, and they were involved in the school system in every way they could. Those citizens are still here. One of the biggest pieces of the puzzle that I feel has happened to Dorchester County was Woods Road. And if you go back 20 plus years ago, Airpax Electronics, they were making breakers that went on the space shuttle. And depending on who you talk to, they would say, well, it was around 2,800, 3,200 employees. If you talk to certain people, it was over 6,000 employees that were involved in Airpax Electronics. You had Western Publishing, which was huge when it came to employ as an employer. Really, Woods Road probably employed 10 to 15,000 people, which is almost in line with the old Phillips Packing Company and the history of them and how they, Dorchester County employed its own. And when you worked out on Woods Road, you were able to be a middle class family. There was health care, there was all that. And when all of those businesses either closed, shipped to Mexico, shipped overseas or whatever, suddenly you have that displaced middle class. And they had to go find a job. And in most instances, I think that's been the formation of what I call a transient society, a society that's willing to go work in Wycomico, Talbot County, Caroline County, go across the bay, go to Kent County, go to Chestertown, work in Delaware, work down at the beach and come home at night. So, those jobs have left. I think there's been a great effort with the tourism industry, with the Hyatt and what it does, what Joel does out there, Joel Bundy, and that's been a help, but it hasn't been a recovery. And I believe at the countywide level, when you suddenly lose that tax base of the middle class, whether they moved away or whatever, and we were just last night, because we're doing the feasibility study now, you're looking at our demographics, and really we're becoming an older, almost like 50 and up, and our student population is dropping, and that creates very different challenges when you're almost turning into a retired community and you're not having those young families have children to support the schools that you have. And if your student population's dropping, that means your state allocation is dropping. And then suddenly you're looking at schools. This building is 1938 as a central office. You're looking at several other buildings that are in the 50s. What do you do? What do you do with a decreased population? And yet we're still the largest county in the state of Maryland when you include our marshlands and waterways and 3 islands. It's a very difficult proposal on how we're going to educate our kids, but how we can do it fiscally responsible as well. Well, I think the pivotal moment was the Woods Road piece that I talked about. I think it's been a gradual transition to schools. And if you talk to you could go as early as a 5-year teacher who started before the pandemic, and now they have students after the pandemic. They said something shifted. If you talk to our 10, 15, 20, 25, 30-year teacher, they all will can go back to kind of where I was and say there has been a transition. Um, I'm not going to call it catastrophic because I really believe we have staff in Dorchester County Public Schools, and you could probably have every superintendent on the shore say the same thing. Teachers are working as hard as they can work, but we have to adapt to what the pandemic brought out of it. Dorchester County was not a one-on-one district. And the state superintendent said, Dave, you're going to be a one-on-one district, because we're not sure we're going to get these kids back in school. A one-on-one device. We took our emergency funds that were provided to us, and we got employees. We needed a bigger staff to handle it. We had to look at everything on how we would do a one-on-one. Normally it's 3 to 5 years as you transition to that. We did it in 3 months. So obviously there was limited PD for our teachers, and our students weren't ready, our parents weren't ready. And when you talk about 3 islands, excuse me, the state superintendent said, Dave, you need to figure it out. I'm like, you need to understand something, Dr. Salmon, who was the state superintendent at the time. We have poor cell phone service down on the islands, let alone have internet access. So those are challenges that work through. I really feel the community stepped up, and we kind of figured it out. But I think we've learned very quickly that, a one-on-one device is not the ultimate teaching tool. It's a tool. And you use it appropriately when you need to and when you feel it's appropriate. There's no substitution for that one-on-one in-person learning situation. And I think the needier student you have, the more that student needs it. And that's kind of where we were. As a point of reference, I believe our county council, as well as our board members, would say the blueprint presently is an unfunded mandate. And, when you look at what it's asking you to do, if you don't increase the funding, it's going to be a problem. And that's why we're doing our feasibility study, because we have to find recurring funds every year. And if, just use the $60,000 for a starting teacher, obviously that means everything else needs to move up as well, whether it's your guidance counselor, your social worker, your assistant principal, your principal, everything trickles up. And I would be the first one to say teachers are underpaid, absolutely, okay? But if you're keeping a funding formula that was in place in the 90s and early 2000s, and you're not adjusting it to fit this, and presently the state superintendent, Superintendent Shudry, is presented a poverty index proposal that really would assist us and do what the blueprint's asking. But I believe, I don't know if that's going to pass this year. That's the only way, and if you do, it's requiring more money from the state, and it's requiring more money from the local municipality, which is our county council. Presently, our county council, interestingly, we got our first numbers, I believe, January 27th, and we were like, hey, we may be okay here for this year, at least this year. The Friday before President's Weekend, there's been a recalculation. And in that recalculation, Dorchester County Public Schools lost over $2.1 million. Well, $100,000 is a big deal here. $2.1 million means we have to start taking away some of the pieces we put in place to assist with behavior issues that we feel kind of came out of the pandemic. So suddenly we don't have them. We got to figure out how to do it with a general fund. And that's why the unfunded mandate piece is coming into play. In the meantime, the county council, their maintenance of effort went from just over $20 million to now over $23 million. So when you're at your tax limit for the county of Dorchester, which we are, they don't know how they're going to do this extra $3 million that they must provide us. So it's become very sticky. And on those recalculation figures, it's come to over $110 million difference from the previous numbers across all the counties of the state. So, the $110 million, that doesn't affect us this way, but 14 counties, they shifted that from being a state allocation to the county now has to come up with that. And I just know this, that if I make a $500,000 mistake, me and I was kidding at my CFO, we're probably both out of here, all right? But the state just made a $110 million plus mistake, and the counties, oh, by the way, you all figure it out. And it's pretty poor, and we've been told that there still could be changes all the way up to April 15th, which pretty much goes through the legislative session. So it's very frustrating. I think there's a concerted effort in the county to understand, we need to be on the same team when it comes to leave the blueprint out of it, just working together for the betterment of education, because what it means to get more people coming to Dorchester County that want to live here and so forth. And then when you add the blueprint, we definitely need to be on the same team. The blueprint is great, and I think it is coming in a time when it's helping us transition to what we feel education should be. Now, in the meantime, Salisbury University, who we used to hire 16 to 20 graduates every year, we may get 3 now.
Why is that?
Because they don't have people going into education, all right? They have the wonderful, best education building, totally devoted to education I've ever seen, and the millennials are very savvy now. I mean, you need to think about it. Let me see, I can go to the Purdue School of Business, and I'm probably guaranteed at least a $60,000, if not $80,000+ business job. If I'm a techie, meaning some IT logarithm, understanding how to build code, I'm probably over $100,000 starting as a graduate. Why do I want to go to the School of Education and all the things that are being required of teachers now? Why do I want to do that with the way students and parents sometimes treat teachers? They're not seen, which just drives me crazy, as that honorable profession as it used to be. It's looked at as a bottom line dollar figure. The majority of the school, sure, at least this year, we're all under $50,000 to start as a salary. If Dorchester County is going down from 16 to 20 we used to hire, down to 3, you need to add that to every school district on the shore. And there's no question that we have some very challenging schools. Do you want to go to a school that you think is less challenging? The millennials are shopping us, the school districts, almost like a car dealer. Right now, we're getting by. We're not satisfied with where we are. This whole board was filled up just minutes before you came in, and it's involved in the budgetary process on what other out-of-the-box ideas we have on how we can keep our teaching force, but also enhance it. So, we're still working at it. But yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it does keep me up at night.